The year was 1835. Thomas Babington Macaulay, a prominent British politician and historian, presented his minute on Indian education. Macaulay proposed replacing the traditional Indian education system with one based entirely on English. This marked the dawn of a new era where English became the language of power, prestige, and upward mobility. Macaulay's proposal was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a progressive step, a way to modernize India and bridge the gap with the West. Others viewed it with suspicion, seeing it as a ploy to undermine Indian culture and assert British dominance. The traditional Indian education system, deeply rooted in Sanskrit and Persian, had long been a source of pride and identity. Replacing it with a Western model represented a significant shift in cultural values. It was about shaping the minds of future generations of Indians, influencing their worldview and ultimately their sense of self. Macaulay's motives for introducing English education were complex and debated. He argued it would civilize Indians, but his intentions were calculated. Macaulay believed Indian culture was inferior to the West. He declared, "A single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia." Macaulay envisioned creating a class of Indians who were English in taste and intellect. These individuals would serve as intermediaries between British rulers and Indian masses. Macaulay's proposal was not without its critics. Prominent figures within the British administration itself raised their voices in dissent. Lord Warren Hastings, the first Governor-General of Bengal, was a strong advocate for understanding and respecting Indian traditions. He believed that governing India effectively required knowledge of its languages, customs, and laws. Hastings had patronized the translation of ancient Indian texts and supported the establishment of institutions like the Calcutta Madrasa. Horace Hayman Wilson, a renowned scholar of Sanskrit, also opposed Macaulay's views. Wilson argued for the importance of preserving and studying India's rich literary and philosophical heritage. Within Indian society, there was widespread resistance to the imposition of English education. Traditional scholars and pandits, the custodians of ancient knowledge, feared the loss of their status and the erosion of centuries-old traditions. However, their concerns were ultimately overshadowed by the prevailing political climate and Macaulay's persuasive arguments. Macaulay's proposal found favour with the British Parliament. In 1835, English was declared the language of administration and higher education in India. This decision marked a turning point, initiating profound cultural and intellectual transformation. English education had a cascading effect on Indian society. It led to new schools and universities modelled after British counterparts. English became the language of government, law and commerce, creating a new elite class. Section 5. Echoes in the Himalayas. The influence of Macaulay's system on Nepal's educational landscape. The ripples of Macaulay's educational reforms were felt far beyond the borders of British India, extending their reach to the neighbouring kingdom of Nepal. While Nepal maintained its independence throughout the British Raj, it couldn't remain untouched by the winds of change sweeping across the Indian subcontinent. The rise of English as the language of power and opportunity in India had a significant impact on Nepal's ruling elite. Recognizing the growing influence of English, they saw the need to adapt and embrace this new language of global discourse. The establishment of English medium schools in Nepal marked a departure from the traditional education system. This shift, while gradual, mirrored the trends witnessed in India, albeit on a smaller scale. Section 6, the unintended consequences, examining the long-term impacts of English education in India. While Macaulay's vision of creating a class of Anglicized Indians became a reality, it also had unintended and far-reaching consequences for Indian society. The emphasis on English education led to the neglect and decline of traditional Indian knowledge systems. As generations passed, The mastery of ancient languages like Sanskrit and Arabic dwindled, and with it, access to a vast repository of knowledge. This decline in traditional learning contributed to a sense of cultural disconnect among some Indians. Many grew up with limited knowledge of their own history, literature, and philosophical traditions. The valorization of Western ideals and the denigration of Indian traditions also had a profound psychological impact. Section 7. The erosion of identity, the gradual decline of native languages and traditional knowledge systems. The introduction of English education in India had a profound impact on the linguistic landscape of the nation. As English rose to prominence, many native languages found themselves relegated to the background. While India has always been a land of linguistic diversity, the dominance of English led to a gradual erosion of this rich heritage. Many traditional languages, once vibrant and thriving, saw a decline in usage, particularly in formal settings. Language is not merely a tool for communication, it is a repository of culture, history, and identity. The decline of native languages meant that generations grew up with limited exposure to their own cultural heritage. Ancient texts, oral histories, and cultural practices became inaccessible to those who could not understand them. This led to a fragmentation of knowledge systems and a disconnect from the wisdom embedded within these traditions. Section 8. A crisis of confidence, Macaulay's legacy and the valorization of Western ideals in India and Nepal. One of the most enduring legacies of Macaulay's education system is the lingering sense of cultural inferiority it fostered among some Indians and Nepalese. By promoting Western ideals and denigrating traditional knowledge systems, Macaulay's system sowed the seeds of self-doubt. This crisis of confidence manifests in various ways. In the realm of education, there is often a preference for Western institutions and degrees. In the cultural sphere, there is a tendency to embrace Western trends while overlooking indigenous art forms, music, and literature. The valorization of Western ideals extends to the political and economic realms as well. There is often a sense that Western models of governance and development are superior. Reclaiming our heritage, the importance of reviving indigenous knowledge systems. There is a growing movement in India and Nepal to reclaim and revitalize indigenous knowledge. True progress lies in balancing tradition and modernity. Reviving indigenous knowledge is about recognizing its value in addressing contemporary challenges. Indigenous knowledge holds immense potential in various fields. Traditional farming practices offer sustainable solutions to food security. Ayurveda provides holistic approaches to healthcare. Integrating indigenous knowledge into modern education empowers future generations. Section 10. A call to action, empowering future generations through a synthesis of traditional wisdom and modern knowledge. The task before us is not to choose between East and West, between tradition and modernity. It is to forge a new path, one that draws upon the wisdom of our ancestors while embracing the possibilities of the present. This requires a fundamental shift in our education systems. We need to move away from rote learning and compartmentalized knowledge. Instead, we need to foster critical thinking, creativity, and a spirit of inquiry. We need to create learning environments that encourage students to connect with their cultural heritage. Empowering future generations requires nurturing their emotional intelligence, empathy, and sense of responsibility. Section 11. Conclusion. Towards a future where India and Nepal stand tall, rooted in their rich heritage. The journey of rediscovering and reclaiming our heritage is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a process of healing, of restoring our cultural confidence, and of realizing our full potential as individuals and as nations. As we move forward, let us remember the words of Mahatma Gandhi. I want the cultures of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible, but I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. Let us embrace the world with open minds and open hearts, learning from other cultures while remaining firmly rooted in our own. Let us create a future where India and Nepal stand tall, not in isolation but in confident engagement with the world.